You know when you see a mind-blowing music video and you just think, wow, that must have cost a fortune. But how much? Really? 100 grand? A million? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the real numbers. And what you're going to find is pretty surprising. The biggest factor isn't some stroke of creative genius. It's just simple math.
And this quote right here, this is the whole game changer. See, for most artists, a big budget feels like a huge risk, right? A gamble. You're just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. But what if it wasn't a gamble at all? What if you could just solve it like an equation? This simple shift in thinking turns what feels like a terrifying financial risk into a problem you can actually figure out.
So, what does creativity look like on a spreadsheet? Honestly, it looks like a long list of choices. Every beautiful shot, every perfect camera angle, every single cut, that's a line item. It's got a dollar sign right next to it. And what that means is the final piece of art is being shaped by financial decisions from day one, way before anyone even picks up a camera.
Okay, let's really get into it. We're calling this the production equation. We're going to pull apart the entire process of making a music video and look at it not as some mysterious artsy thing, but as a system of costs. A system that you can actually understand, plan for, and, this is the most important part, control.
So here's the core of the equation. It's really made up of three types of costs. First, you've got your fixed costs. These are things you pay for no matter what, like, say, your editing software subscription. Then you have variable costs, which change based on your decisions, like paying an editor by the hour. And finally, you have scalable costs, and the crew is a perfect example. You can have a tiny 3-person crew or a massive 50-person crew. Getting a handle on these three categories, that's everything.
So how do these costs actually play out in the real world? Well, it turns out that pretty much every single video budget, whether it's for $1,000 or $1 million, breaks down into three very clear phases. This is basically the universal blueprint for how these things get made.
And here they are. You've got pre-production, which is all about the planning. Then production, that's the actual shoot itself. And finally, post-production, which is where all the editing and the magic happens. Yeah, just think of it as the plan, the shoot, and the polish. Simple as that.
Now, here's something that most people just don't realize. A huge chunk of the work is done before anyone even thinks about yelling action. Pre-production is the absolute bedrock of the entire project. This is where you nail down the idea, you find your locations, you plan everything out, and the rule here is so simple. Every hour you spend in this phase will save you a massive headache and a ton of money down the line.
And you can see the cost of that planning right here. You know, just sketching out a simple concept might only run you a few $100, but if you're planning a really complex, multi-day shoot, that plan alone could cost you $5,000 or even more, all before you've even shot a single second of footage.
Okay, so now we're at phase 2, production. And this is the big one. All that careful planning leads to this moment. And trust me, this is where the numbers start to get really serious.
Just look at the difference here. A basic crew might be, 3 people? But a high-end production? Whoa. Suddenly you need specialists for lighting, for the art department, for styling. I mean, the list just goes on. And every single person you add is another day rate that goes straight onto the bill.
And all those day rates? They add up to this, $30,000 or more. And that's a totally realistic price tag for a single day on a mid-level shoot. I mean, when you add up the crew, the gear, the location, it gets expensive. And it gets expensive fast. And remember, that's just for one day.
So, after the shoot is finally done, we hit the last phase, post-production. This is where all that raw footage gets turned into the final video you actually see. It's edited together, the colors are corrected and graded to create a specific mood, and any visual effects are added. It's a process that takes a massive amount of skill and, you guessed it, a lot of time.
And just like with planning and shooting, the cost here can scale dramatically. A simple, clean edit might be pretty affordable, maybe a few $100. But the moment you get into professional, cinematic color grading and visual effects, well, now you're paying for a specialist's time and expertise, and that price can easily jump into the tens of thousands.
All right, so we've covered the big 3 phases. But now, we need to talk about the stuff that most people forget about, the hidden variables. I like to call these the silent budget killers, because they can totally derail an entire project if you don't see them coming. Think of your main budget as the part of the iceberg you see above the water. But underneath the surface are all these hidden costs. We're talking about things like travel, insurance, location permits, even just feeding the crew for the day.
Individually, they seem pretty small, but when you add them all together, they become a huge part of the final cost.
And just look at this breakdown. Those hidden variables, they're not some minor detail. They can easily eat up a quarter of your total budget, 25%. Not planning for this is probably the single biggest reason projects go over budget. It's that simple.
So knowing all this, how do you actually control the cost? This next part is all about strategy. It's not about being less ambitious. It's about being way smarter in how you approach the whole equation.
And there are really two main ways to think about it. On a low budget, you have to get scrappy. You lean on clever ideas and being super efficient. On a high budget, you can throw more money at the problem to get more scale and more specialists. But the key thing to realize is that both are just different strategies for solving the exact same core equation.
And this right here might be the most important takeaway of all. Money doesn't buy a great idea. It buys you tools, time, and people. It guarantees you more resources. A truly great video, though, that comes from a great concept, and that can happen at any budget.
So if you want to be strategic, here are the levers you can actually pull. Keep your locations to a minimum. Every time the whole production has to move, it costs a fortune. Work with a smaller, more nimble crew. And the big one we keep coming back to, put all your energy into developing a rock-solid concept and a crystal-clear plan from the very beginning.
Let's end on this really powerful idea. The real budget killer isn't a fancy camera or a giant crew. It's uncertainty. It's not knowing what you want. It's not having a clear plan. Every single time you add clarity to the process, you are actively, directly reducing the final cost.
So there you have it. Making a music video isn't the wild gamble, it's an equation. The most expensive mistake you can make is uncertainty, and your absolute best strategy is clarity, which really just leaves one last question for whatever project you're dreaming up next. What's